Most people studying English right now are doing it completely wrong. They spend years reading textbooks, memorizing grammar rules, taking tests, and guess what? They still can't have a normal conversation. But I discovered something that changed everything for me, and it's gonna sound crazy at first. What if I told you that speaking is literally the only skill you need to master English? Not grammar, not reading, not writing, just speaking. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this works, and more importantly, how you can use this to finally become fluent. Look, I know what you're thinking right now. You're probably saying, that's impossible, I need grammar, I need vocabulary, I need all these other things. And I get it. I used to think the same way. I spent 3 years studying English the traditional way. I had notebooks full of grammar rules. I could pass any test you put in front of me. But when I tried to speak with a native speaker, my mind went blank. I couldn't say anything. It was embarrassing. But then I discovered something that the language learning industry doesn't want you to know. Something that completely changed my approach to English. And once I made this one shift, I went from struggling to speak basic sentences to having full conversations in just a few months. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly why speaking is the only skill you really need, the science behind why this works, and most importantly, the exact system you can copy to do the same thing starting today. Let me ask you something.
How many years have you been studying English?
1 year, 2 years, 5 years, maybe even 10 years? And how confident do you feel when you need to actually speak? Be honest with yourself. Most people who've been studying English for years still feel nervous when they need to speak. They freeze up. They translate in their head. They forget words they know they've studied before. And this creates a horrible cycle. You study more grammar because you think that's the problem. You memorize more vocabulary lists. You do more reading exercises. But nothing changes. You still can't speak naturally. Here's the truth that nobody talks about. The traditional way of learning English is broken. It's designed to make you a good student, not a good speaker. Think about it. In school, they teach you grammar rules first. They make you memorize verb tenses. They give you vocabulary lists to memorize. They make you read boring textbooks. They test you on writing. But when do they actually make you speak? Almost never. Maybe you speak for 2 minutes at the end of class if you're lucky. This is completely backwards. It's like trying to learn how to swim by reading a book about swimming. You can read about swimming techniques all you want. You can memorize all the theory. But until you actually get in the water and start swimming, you won't learn anything. The same thing happens with English. You can study grammar for years, but until you actually start speaking, you won't become fluent. And here's what makes this even worse. The more you study without speaking, the more afraid you become of speaking. You build up all this pressure in your head. You think you need to be perfect before you open your mouth. You're scared of making mistakes. You're worried about what people will think. So you study more and more, hoping that one day you'll suddenly feel ready. But that day never comes. I know this because I lived through it. I was that person. I studied English in school for years. I got good grades. I could explain the difference between present perfect and past simple. I knew hundreds of vocabulary words, but I couldn't order food in English without sweating. I couldn't have a simple conversation without my brain freezing. All those years of study, and I still couldn't do the one thing that actually matters, which is speaking. The problem is that traditional English education treats language like it's math or history. They teach you rules and facts. They make you memorize and take tests. But language isn't like that. Language is a skill, not knowledge. You don't become a good speaker by knowing things. You become a good speaker by doing things. By speaking over and over again, making mistakes, correcting yourself, trying again. And here's something that's going to shock you. All that grammar you've been studying, you don't actually need most of it to speak English. Think about native English speakers. Do they sit around thinking about grammar rules when they talk? Of course not. They just speak naturally. They learned English by speaking it, not by studying it. Children learn their native language perfectly, without ever studying a single grammar rule. They just speak, make mistakes, and get corrected naturally through conversation. But the education system has convinced you that you need to learn English in the opposite order. First grammar, then vocabulary, then maybe someday speaking. It's backwards. It's inefficient. And most importantly, it doesn't work. So let me explain why speaking is actually the only skill you need. And I'm going to break this down into several parts because this is really important to understand. First, let's talk about how the brain actually learns language. Your brain doesn't learn language by memorizing rules. It learns language by pattern recognition. When you speak English over and over, your brain starts recognizing patterns automatically. It figures out grammar without you having to study it. It's the same way you learned your native language as a child. Nobody taught you grammar rules when you were 3 years old. You just heard people speak, you tried to copy them, you made mistakes, and your brain figured out the patterns naturally. Scientists call this implicit learning. It's when your brain learns something without conscious effort. And the crazy thing is, implicit learning is actually way more powerful than explicit learning, which is the type of learning you do in school. When you explicitly study grammar rules, you're using your conscious mind to memorize information. But when you speak and practice speaking, you're training your subconscious mind to recognize patterns. Your subconscious mind is much more powerful. It can process information faster and remember it better. This is why native speakers can speak perfectly without thinking about grammar. Their subconscious mind has learned all the patterns through years of speaking. They don't need to think about whether to use present perfect or past simple. They just know what sounds right because their brain has heard and produced those patterns thousands of times. Now, here's the second reason why speaking is the most important skill. When you speak, you're actually practicing all the other skills at the same time. Think about it. When you have a conversation in English, what are you doing? You're listening to the other person. You're processing vocabulary. You're constructing sentences. You're thinking about meaning. You're using grammar without even realizing it. Speaking is like a complete workout for your English skills. It combines everything into one activity. But when you study grammar alone, you're only working on one small piece. When you read alone, you're only working on reading. When you write alone, you're only working on writing. But speaking? Speaking includes everything. This is why people who focus on speaking improve so much faster than people who focus on traditional study. Let me give you a real example. I have a friend who studied English in university. She spent 4 years taking English classes. She studied grammar intensively. She read English literature. She wrote essays. After 4 years, she still couldn't have a basic conversation with a native speaker. She would freeze up and couldn't express her thoughts. Then I have another friend who never studied English formally. He just started talking with English speakers online every day. He made tons of mistakes at first. His grammar was terrible, but he kept speaking. After just 1 year of daily speaking practice, he was more fluent than my university friend. His grammar wasn't perfect, but he could express any idea he wanted. He could have real conversations. He could understand native speakers easily. The difference? One person studied English. The other person used English. And using English means speaking English. Here's the third reason, and this one is really important. Speaking forces you to think in English. When you study grammar or vocabulary, you're usually thinking in your native language. You see an English word and translate it to your language. You learn a grammar rule and understand it through your language. But when you speak, you don't have time to translate. You have to think directly in English. If you pause for 10 seconds to translate every word, the conversation dies. This is huge because thinking in English is the key to fluency. Fluency doesn't mean speaking perfectly. Fluency means speaking naturally without translating in your head. And the only way to develop this skill is by speaking. The more you speak, the more your brain gets used to thinking in English. Eventually, English words and phrases just pop into your head automatically. You stop translating. You start thinking in English naturally. I remember the exact moment this happened for me. I was having a conversation with an American friend, and suddenly I realized I wasn't translating anymore. English words were just coming to me naturally. I was thinking in English without even trying. That was the moment I knew I was becoming truly fluent. And that moment only happened because I had been speaking English every single day for months. Now let's talk about the fourth reason. Speaking builds confidence, and confidence is absolutely essential for language learning. When you only study without speaking, you never build confidence. You always feel like you're not ready. You're always waiting until your English is perfect before you try to speak. But here's the secret that nobody tells you. You will never feel perfectly ready. There will always be words you don't know. There will always be grammar you're unsure about. Waiting until you're perfect means you'll wait forever. But when you force yourself to speak even when you're not ready, something magical happens. You realize that people understand you even when you make mistakes. You realize that communication works even with imperfect grammar. You realize that making mistakes is okay. And every time you successfully communicate something in English, your confidence grows a little bit. That confidence makes you want to speak more. And speaking more makes you improve faster. It's a positive cycle. Compare this to the traditional study approach. When you study grammar and never speak, what happens? You become more and more afraid of making mistakes. Every new grammar rule you learn makes you more aware of all the ways you might mess up. You become paralyzed by perfectionism. Your confidence goes down, not up. This is why you see people who studied English for 10 years but still can't speak. They studied themselves into fear and perfectionism. Here's the fifth reason, and this is something most people never think about. Speaking gives you immediate feedback. When you speak with someone, you know right away if they understood you or not. If they look confused, you know you need to try saying it differently. If they respond correctly, you know your message worked. This immediate feedback helps your brain learn what works and what doesn't. But when you study alone, you don't get this feedback. You might think you understand something, but you don't really know until you try to use it in a real conversation. I can't tell you how many times I studied a grammar rule and thought I understood it perfectly, but then when I tried to use it while speaking, I got confused. The real learning happened when I used it while speaking and got corrected or understood through context. This feedback loop is essential for learning. Your brain needs to know what works and what doesn't. Speaking provides this feedback constantly. Every conversation is a chance to test your English and see what happens. You're constantly adjusting and improving based on real-world results. Now here's something that might surprise you. Speaking also helps you learn vocabulary faster than any other method. When you learn a word from a textbook, you might remember it for a little while, but you'll probably forget it soon. But when you learn a word by using it in conversation, by struggling to express something and then finally finding the right word, that word sticks in your brain much better. This is because of emotional connection. When you use a word to successfully communicate something you really wanted to say, your brain creates a strong memory of that moment. The emotion and the context help cement the word in your memory, but when you just see a word on a list and memorize it with a definition, there's no emotion, no context, no story. It's just a boring fact that your brain will forget quickly. I learned this the hard way. I used to spend hours making vocabulary flashcards and memorizing them. I would memorize 50 words, feel good about myself, and then forget most of them within a week. But the words I learned through conversation, those words stuck with me forever. Even now, I can remember the exact conversations where I learned certain words because the experience was memorable. So here's what all of this means. If speaking is the most important skill, if it helps you learn faster, if it builds confidence, if it trains your brain to think in English, and if it gives you immediate feedback, then why are you wasting time on anything else? This is the key insight that changed everything for me. I realized that every hour I spent studying grammar could have been an hour spent speaking. Every hour I spent memorizing vocabulary lists could have been an hour of conversation. All that time I wasted on traditional study methods could have been used to actually practice the one skill that matters. So I made a decision. I stopped studying English the traditional way. I stopped doing grammar exercises. I stopped making vocabulary lists. I stopped reading textbooks. Instead, I focused everything on speaking. Every single day, I found ways to speak English. I spoke with online language partners. I spoke with myself when I was alone. I shadowed native speakers by copying what they said. I described my day out loud in English. I spoke, and here's what happened. In the first month, I felt uncomfortable. I made tons of mistakes. I couldn't express many things I wanted to say. But I kept going. By the second month, I started noticing improvement. Words were coming to me faster. I was making fewer basic mistakes. By the third month, I could have real conversations. I wasn't perfect, but I could express my thoughts and understand others. After 6 months of focusing only on speaking, I was more fluent than I had been after 3 years of traditional study. My grammar wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. And here's the amazing part. My grammar actually improved without me studying it. By speaking so much, my brain had learned the patterns naturally. I could use complex tenses correctly without thinking about the rules. I just knew what sounded right because I had heard and used those patterns hundreds of times. This is the power of focusing on speaking. You improve faster because you're practicing the actual skill you want to develop. You're not wasting time on things that don't directly help you speak better. It's like if you want to get good at basketball, you play basketball. You don't spend all your time reading books about basketball and watching videos about basketball. You actually play the game. So let me break down exactly what you need to do starting today. First, accept this truth. Speaking is the most important skill. It's not grammar. It's not vocabulary memorization. It's not reading or writing. It's speaking. Once you accept this, you can stop wasting time on things that don't help you speak better. Second, find ways to speak English every single day. It doesn't matter if you speak with other people or just with yourself. What matters is that you're using your mouth to produce English sounds and sentences. You could find language exchange partners online. You could talk to yourself while you're walking or doing chores. You could shadow YouTube videos. You could describe what you see around you in English. There are endless ways to practice speaking, even if you don't have English-speaking friends. Third, stop being afraid of mistakes. Every mistake you make is actually helping you learn. When you make a mistake and realize it, your brain remembers that situation and learns from it. Native speakers make mistakes too. The difference is they don't care. They just keep speaking. You need to develop the same attitude. Making mistakes means you're actually using the language, which means you're learning. Fourth, think in English as much as possible. This is hard at first, but it gets easier with practice. Start by thinking simple sentences in English. Describe what you're doing. Talk to yourself in your head in English. The more you think in English, the easier speaking becomes because your brain gets used to constructing English sentences quickly. Fifth, use speaking to learn everything else. When you encounter a new word, use it in a sentence out loud. When you learn a grammar structure, practice it by speaking. Don't just read and memorize. Actually use it by speaking. This will help you remember it much better, and you'll be able to use it naturally in real conversations. And finally, be consistent. Speaking once a week won't work. You need to speak every single day, even if it's just for 10 or 15 minutes. Consistency is more important than long study sessions. 15 minutes of speaking every day is better than 2 hours of speaking once a week. Your brain needs regular practice to build the patterns and habits. Now, I need to tell you something important. This approach isn't easy at the beginning. It's uncomfortable to speak when you're not confident yet. It's frustrating to not be able to express what you want to say. You will make mistakes and feel embarrassed. But here's what I promise you. If you stick with this for just 3 months, speaking English every single day, you will see more improvement than you've seen in years of traditional study. The people who succeed with language learning aren't the ones who study the most. They're the ones who speak the most. They're the ones who push through the discomfort and awkwardness of being a beginner. They're the ones who prioritize using the language over studying about the language. You have a choice right now. You can continue studying English the way you've always studied it, hoping that someday you'll magically become fluent. Or you can accept that speaking is the key, make speaking your main focus, and finally start seeing real progress. 3 years from now, you're going to be 3 years older no matter what. The question is, will you be fluent in English, or will you still be stuck at the same level, still afraid to speak, still waiting until you're ready? The choice is yours. But I can tell you from personal experience that focusing on speaking is the fastest way to get from where you are now to where you want to be. Remember, you don't need perfect grammar to communicate. You don't need a huge vocabulary to express yourself. What you need is the courage to open your mouth and speak, even when it's hard, even when you make mistakes, even when you feel stupid. Because every time you speak, you're getting better. Every conversation is making you more fluent. Every mistake is teaching you something new. So stop studying so much and start speaking more. Stop reading about English and start using English. Stop waiting until you're ready and start speaking today. Because speaking really is all you need to get fluent. Everything else is just extra. Focus on speaking, do it consistently, and you will become fluent. It's that simple. If this helped you, hit subscribe because I share more English learning secrets every week.